Hey folks, so welcome to another video about how to run a successful RPG game with kids, like elementary school age kids. My name's Linus, and today we're going to be talking about how to do treasure. How much should you give out, how it can be used as a teaching tool for the game, and how to maybe prevent arguments from happening during the treasure distribution time. Alright, so you might be wondering, how much treasure should I be giving out? The answer is a lot. So when I run a game with kids, I try to give out a good quantity of treasure pretty regularly. And there are a couple of reasons. One of them is it's a good kind of positive reinforcer. You know, I think that sometimes kids can get a little frustrated, or they might not quite get what's going on, but then they find this item, they find this piece of treasure, and it's like, oh, cool, okay, I got this thing. You might be thinking like, oh, well, Linus, like, don't you have to worry about kind of like all these big DM words like game economics, or just making sure that adventurers sort of stay motivated, that they're not getting so much gold that they don't want to go out and adventure, or that they're getting too powerful, like they're getting a bunch of really powerful magical items. Well, the answer is you don't have to give out really potent items as treasure. You can give out items that what I think of are more like customizing items. So it doesn't have to be an item that necessarily gives someone a bunch of new powers, but it might be an item that they just kind of want for their character because they think it's cool. Because I think that kids are more used to a more dynamic gaming environment, so being able to get things that they can modify their character with can be really fun and fulfilling. For example, maybe you have a character in the game who just really loves casting fireball. They love fire, all their spells are fire, that's just kind of their thing. So maybe you put an item in a treasure chest or in a crate that is like a belt with like orange leather and flames going around the belt, and that doesn't add any magical powers, but it gives the player a chance to sort of customize the character. They feel like they found something, that they've gotten a reward for going on this adventure, and it doesn't boost up their stats or kind of boost up their power to a point where it's going to make the game not challenging. Moments like these can also be great as like a teaching moment. So for instance, let's say that player gets that belt, and maybe there's another player who's really into birds. Like they love, their character loves birds, or maybe they are a bird, something like that. So they see that someone else has this like kind of cool belt, and they're like, oh, are there any like bird items? Well, not necessarily, but what you can do then is say, hey, well, there are no bird items in here, but you guys did get a couple gold from that as well. Maybe the next time you go to town, you can find a tailor to embroider some birds like onto a scarf, or you can go to a store and try to look for some sort of bird patterned clothing or fabric. And those moments are great because the kid might not even have thought of that. A lot of times when you're dealing with people, like kids are just starting out, they haven't played games a whole bunch, and so something like that might not even pop into their head. But when suggested to them, next time they go to town, they're like, oh, well, I want to get this embroidered, I want to try to, look for this shop, look for that shop, and that's this chance where they can kind of spend their gold in a different way, they can customize their character, they can feel like they're really immersed into the game. I mean, you can definitely also give out more potent magical items, but at least in my experience, I think I prefer to give out a good quantity of maybe slightly less potent, but still interesting magical items over kind of a large area or a long time span, and then you get those kind of more potent items here and there, versus making people wait or hold out for those potent items, because it can get a little bit frustrating. because, people want to discover things. Even if it's not something that is a mega powerful artifact, it's cool to find a crate and open it up and see what's inside. All right, how to distribute treasure. If you've ever done anything like this with kids, you know that sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes arguments can break out around treasure, especially if it's something that is a little bit more potent or objects that might be a little bit more powerful. So, here's what I recommend. First and foremost, on average, I recommend trying to put the same number of items, if it's like a treasure chest, put the same number of items in the chest as there are characters at the table. You don't have to do this, but I found that it can make life a little bit easier. If you have 5 people at the table, put 5 items, or put like 10 items, put 15 items, so you don't have that thing at the end where, there's one thing left, so who gets seconds? I mean, you can if you want to, but I found that is usually a good way to avoid that issue if that's something you're worried about. Second, I always try to explain how we do treasure to everybody beforehand, or when like treasure shows up, because I think the kind of instinct is a lot of times people are like, oh, mine, I want that, mine, and they say, I grab it, I take it, mine. And I explain to people that I think it's really important that we try to do treasure in a fair way, or else sometimes arguments happen, and then instead of playing the game, we end up arguing for a while, and that's not fun. So I explain to everybody the way I do treasure, and the way I think has worked pretty good, is I read out whatever has been discovered, and I tell kids, okay, in your mind, pick kind of your first choice, maybe like a second choice, and then we'll go back through and figure out who gets what. And if there's some item that 2-3 people want, then either make a compromise, do rock paper scissors, roll a die and see who gets the highest number, because you might not get your first choice this time, but there's going to be more treasure. If you keep playing, then there's going to be more treasure. The next time you might get that item that you really want. If an argument does start to happen, again, I say, hey, it's no fun to argue about this type of stuff. There's always be more treasure. Do something like rock, paper, scissors, or roll a die, but sometimes people can be getting to a place where they're having a hard time reaching that compromise. I've said in the past, on very rare occasions, I'll set a time limit and say, okay, we've got 2 minutes, 5 minutes to figure this out, and then if we can't figure it out, then no one gets it. I've never actually had to enforce that. I think that usually gets people to a place where they're like, okay, if we can't figure this out, then no one's going to get it, and we're just going to not get treasure. And I think that usually gets people to a place where like, okay, well, we only have so much time. We want to be able to do other stuff, so let's get this figured out. Something I always try to do is I remind people to write the items down. I think it can be really tempting sometimes for kids to sort of be like, oh, I'll just remember that I have that. And then, by the next week, they're like, oh, wait, what? Did I have that thing? And I think that's actually really common of adult players as well. I'm not trying to say only kids do that. Because I've given out a lot of treasure, and it's not uncommon for something to sort of be gotten, and then, they don't write it down, so it's gone. And people forget about it. So always trying to remind people, make sure to, if they get anything, write it down. Alright, so that's kind of the system that I've worked out for doing treasure with kids when I run an RPG game. Be generous, give out lots of stuff, leave lots of opportunities for, crates, chests, barrels to be opened up and things collected from. Give out things that, can be customizing, that can make a player, allow a player to kind of make their character look and do kind of what they want, the way they want, without necessarily giving a bunch of really powerful magic items. You can give those out sometimes, but give kids lots of chances to make their character theirs. You can use that as a teaching experience. You can use that as a way to suggest maybe something that people, maybe if they didn't get it as treasure, maybe when they go into town they can buy it or have it made for them. and that's another sort of facet of, like, use some of the gold maybe they collected. And when you give out treasure, remind people that you don't want to argue, because it's, can turn into a thing where instead of playing, you're arguing, and you might not get your first pick this time, but, there's more treasure to come. Make a compromise, roll a die, and you're going to have a little bit more fun that way. So, I hope this was helpful. If you liked it, click like. If you like these videos, subscribe. Check out my Patreon. Leave some comments below if these videos have been helpful. If there's something that you want me to explain more, if there's another topic about gaming with kids that you would love to learn about, I just might have the knowledge on it. I'd love to make some more videos. So, hope this is helpful, and see you soon.